what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, you ever do a topic and you wonder why I have to do it? Like why it has to be covered, because you figure it's so much common sense until all of a sudden you find out that it's not? This is one of those episodes. This is an episode where you're wondering why it has to be done because you figure that this is 101 knowledge. And the episode today is, why are we not giving officers vests? It's that simple. Why are we not giving correctional officers vests? So we're going to have two people to share the discussion with me. We have Russ Hamilton and Connie Alleyne. What's up, Russ? Housekeepers of Chaos.
Anthony, Keepers of Chaos is going great. We're making great strides. We're getting more people in there all the time. We're staying very focused and very centered on providing great content, training, and history regarding corrections. And, it's just a great forum, really, for every corrections professional, not just the custody people, but those that are, in any part of corrections. And like I say, it's going gangbusters.
Yeah, and I love that your group is growing by the day. Eventually, what we got to do, guys, I just want to remind people, guys. So we have a lot of people that decide to bastardize their profession. These channels that are growing really quick, they get that engagement. So they have a very active community, and YouTube recognizes that. So what happens here, guys, it kind of puts us behind the eight ball because they're able to get their message out a lot quicker because they have that engagement. So hopefully when we realize that we're together in this mission, trying to spread the word, we try to share the content, but more importantly, be engaged. It's not just about sharing it to people who aren't going to get involved. It's sharing to the people that are going to get involved. We all work next to those people, that want to, do something more. This is an opportunity to do it. We always invite people on the venue, but we want to keep people engaged. We want to get those likes. We want to get those comments because YouTube recognizes that and then promotes it to a bigger audience. And eventually the audience that they'll start promoting it to will be the audience that is not necessarily in our profession, but maybe looking to understand what the profession's about. So if we don't get to that group first and someone else does, that initial impression of what's being painted becomes harder for us to fight against because, again, they've already settled that in. So, again, guys, usually I don't do this, but let's try to get more engaged. I know the content sometimes is long, but, guys, we're also dedicating time to make sure the message gets out there. I had some guy comment recently that he saw the thumbnail, saw what was underneath on an episode that we had about cowardice and correction, but he literally says in the comment that there's no way I'm going to watch that for 45 minutes. Guys, if you're not willing to give 45 minutes to your career to make you better or whatever it is that we offer, that's on you. But we do the content until we feel that we've done enough. Yes, some content's longer than others. It is what it is. But we do that because we want to make sure that during the process that we don't cut anything out, that we exhaust them. That's why these videos are used for training. So, guys, running time or not, and again, I always appreciate the people that are watching this, so don't take it the wrong way. I would love to do shorter content. Sometimes that happens and we can get it off. But when we have discussions like this and we're fighting for a point, we have to make sure that we present every argument we can because people are going to look for that loophole. Connie, author, Cage was her cocoon. How's everything going with you, Connie?
Everything's going good. I think the Cage was her cocoon continues to sell. I appreciate all those who purchase. I've seen a few people on Keepers of Chaos who ordered books and they're taking pictures and showing out and showing off, which I appreciate. So yeah, I'm all for it. I'm here tonight. I'm really just interested in learning this time around, just because you guys, anytime I want to show it you guys, it's literally take out my pen and paper. So exciting time right now.
Yeah, and Connie's up.
And I'm awake.
There it is. There it is. Hey guys, so the book's doing well too. Thank you guys for all that you've been doing. The link to the book's in the description. You guys have been really helping me out. The book's selling every day. So I appreciate that. Guys, if you're an agency and you want to buy books in bulk, email me. If it's anything over 100, let me know. I can seriously discount it. Instead of you going to Amazon, you'd be paying double, and that includes extra for shipping. I can handle that and make it a lot cheaper for you guys. Trust and believe, a lot cheaper. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tear Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to ask a question and we're going to discuss it. Why are we not giving our officers vests? Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we are back. You notice I don't have my hat. I can't find my hat. I don't know what's going on, but I'll be honest with you. I'm freshly. Oh, what is this? Oh, guys, I got like these 2 birthmarks here. Connie, you're medical. Later on, let's take a look at this. I don't know. I realized that. It looks like 2 little devil horns. But guys, sorry, guys. It's late. It's 9 o'clock, and we're over 40. So, so it is what it is. Hey guys, so this is a very important topic, all jokes aside, because after what happened in Indiana Department of Corrections, we're left asking ourselves, could we have done something more? And one of the things that came out during this discussion, now whether it was directly related to what happened in Indiana or just in general, is, are our officers getting vests? The reason why is when you have a hero that gets stabbed, that is usually the first question that we in the field ask. Was he wearing the vest? Was he issued a vest? What's going on? So we're hearing in general, not so much specific to Indiana, but just, going to our groups and kind of doing these surveys. I know I did one on YouTube recently, very high percentage that are not issued vests. I even know an officer that reached out to me recently who watches everything we do and says he was actually told by the agency, because this officer's a bigger gentleman, that they don't have his size. So instead of doing the right thing and saying, we don't have your size, we'll get your size. In the meantime, stay home so we can, make sure once we get your size, then you come to work. He's forced to come into work, without the proper size. So, I mean, this is definitely a discussion that's going to hit home to a lot of us, but definitely hits home with Russ. Russ, can you imagine going to work at this point in 2021? In 2021, can you imagine being a correctional officer and working these dangerous facilities without a vest?
Absolutely not. But I'll tell you what, the me that was a brand new, fish rookie at the time, back in 1989, I could imagine it from back then because that's all we had. California Department of Corrections didn't get vests for everyone until 2005. And so, looking backwards then, it seemed like the norm. It seemed, it was the climate at the time that it was just, oh, no vests. Now, having seen the kind of things that I've seen up to this point, I know now that, that was not a good thing to be doing. We saw, an explosion of vests taking place on the street level with ballistic vests for police officers. And yet, we just kind of, hung around and we didn't get any of that great, life-saving gear until very late on. And even now, very few departments have the kind of coverage where everyone gets a vest. They have a few specific areas usually, shoes or seg or something like that, or a max, where some people come in and they have one that they check out or something like that. But California Department of Corrections, thankfully in 2005, made it where everyone had their own personal custom fitted vest.
Yeah, and it's sad because they're using the status of the inmate as a way to determine if a vest is needed or not. That's a lot of trust you're putting on the inmate. I mean, at the end of the day, we're taught that an inmate's an inmate. Keep your guard up. But once these inmates start to go into these lesser levels of custody, well, it's okay. They're full men now and, you don't need a vest. Well, you got a lot of inmates that could have full men and just be as impulsive as inmates that are in max custody. And the funny thing is, sometimes the inmates that have life aren't the problematic inmates. It's the inmates that are going in and out. So universal precaution is that we don't just pick and choose who gets a vest. We give it to everyone, because at that point, you never know where the threat is. And Connie, when I don't know what it was like, I guess, in Rikers or in Connecticut when you worked at Connecticut, but were you used to seeing officers with vests during your career? Or is this something where, you know, I don't know, maybe this is new to you with people not wearing vests?
So it's new to me, people not wearing vests. I've known in both systems that people wore vests. Now, I know there's always been challenges actually getting access. Like, is there enough for everyone? And I mean, I just think with what we know about the population being so unpredictable and being so impulsive, I can't imagine that the decision would be driven by inmate behavior, right? As opposed to us being universally precautious, right? Which is what we've always been taught.
And I love what you just said there, because technically us in corrections, we get paid for what could happen. I mean, that's why most of us can't do the job. You know what I mean? The people on the outside, they don't know what it is that we have to deal with every day. I mean, they may only see the routine of things, but having said that, any moment something can happen, whether, you know, it's in a full min unit, in a max unit. And technically, usually those full minimum units, there's more interaction with the inmate population. I mean, even now in general with corrections, with, you know, trying to get these inmates to programs and schools, we interact more with the inmates now than we ever did before. So because that interactions have increased, what should we do? Well, we need to protect those that are going to have to control those interactions. You know, this is a different type of corrections. I mean, this is a corrections now where you really can't even lock inmates down anymore. You know, this is a corrections that, you know, is literally about getting those inmates to programs, get those inmates to, you know, have some form of rehabilitation. That's fine. We could do the job. You know, we'll do the job. But are you doing enough to protect us and motivate us to make sure that we're safe during those interactions? Now, Russ, just I know, guys, this is a simple one-on-one discussion, but bear with us because there's a lot of people right now that are not at that initial level. So we're going to kind of have a very, very, what we feel is an easy discussion, but still not being heard. But Russ, if I may ask, what are some of the benefits of an officer being issued a vest?
Okay, you know, I think that one of the things that we really saw, especially with regard to just recently with Lieutenant Lasco, there were a lot of things to unpack in that particular incident and the way things unfolded. A lot of different things, if they'd gone, you know, slightly one way or the other, he might be alive. But the big thing that I can point to is the fact that he was not wearing a vest. In his case, if that had been available to him, if that had been mandatory, if that had been something that he was supplied with and custom fitted and expected to wear, it's with an almost surety that he'd still be with us. And so that's the kind of thing that, you know, I really look to try and press home to officers who are sometimes confused about what wearing a vest actually means. When we first got our vests in 2005, a lot of people didn't want to wear them. And so a lot of people just weren't going to, but it was mandatory. It was something that we had to adapt to. It was something that we had to adopt as part of what we did on a day-to-day basis with regard to safety and security. So eventually that original reticence kind of melted away. And I think that people are much more accepting. There are some issues with vests, and we'll get to some of those in this. There's also some myths about vests. When we originally got ours, though, the way it unfolded was, in a lot of regards, an actual tragedy, though. When we first started to get the vests, one particular institution was refusing to issue the ones that they had. And the ones that they had, I mean, were all for specific officers. I mean, your name was, you know, attached to the tag on that thing because it had been custom fitted right for you. You know, there was no doubt, you know, that was going to be your vest. And I don't know if it was just that they were mad that the union had bargained for this, or just that they wanted to be recalcitrant because they felt that's the way they should deal with officers, but they were refusing to pass them out. And on January the 10th, 2005, there was a vest, a few hundred yards away in a warehouse trailer with the name Officer Manuel Gonzalez on it. And Manuel Gonzalez on that particular day was stabbed and killed. All right. So, we should be thinking about the theater that we're operating in, which is the 21st century. Everyone should have a damn vest. Is it costly? Yes. Is it worth it? By all means. Are there problems? Yeah, there's that too, but we'll get to that.
By the way, guys, once your department mandates the vest, you got to wear it. If God forbid something happens to you and they find out that you're not wearing the vest, there's a good chance your family won't collect anything. Because once the department decides to go full force, spend that money, mandate the vest, issue the vest, you have to wear it. Now, with that said, they're also, like Russell mentioned, and I'll probably go, let me just go back to Russ for one more question, Connie, real quick, is when obviously the vest can be very uncomfortable. You work in a lot of these facilities down in South that don't have the AC. There's like really no climate control, very uncomfortable. And we get that. So when you issue the vest, let's not forget that we also have to make the areas comfortable for those officers to wear it. So, you're not issuing a vest, let's say in an area in Texas where those facilities could be 120 degrees, and then expect those officers to wear the vest. Now, God forbid an officer does take it off and something does happen to them. I would push on the fact that you didn't do anything to regulate the climate for where the vest is comfortable. Because if not, the vest, at heat like that, the vest could be a concern, heat stroke or whatnot. But Russ, before these states or before these local jails, prisons, whatever it is, issues these vests, what are some of the things that they should do to kind of encourage people to wear it or not give them an excuse not to wear it?
Okay, so even though, yes, the vest can be uncomfortable, it can be muggy and it can be hot, it can also be life-saving. But one thing, or several of the things that we can do, though, is there are things that can be done to mitigate that. There's some specialized undergarment vests that you can buy that help with the airflow behind it. You can regulate the climate control, hopefully, in some of the areas. I'm firmly for that, vest or not, just for the sheer comfort of staff. I don't care about the inmates, but I do care about staff. It would be nice if we all had that climate controlled environment. Some other things that you could do is you could have, cooling stations with some air hoses to get some relief from that from time to time, hooked into a little AC unit or something like that. You can also, one of the things that I used to do all the time, and believe me, one area that I worked, we used to have these big, steel doors, and it would get so hot that they would warp so much that you couldn't open them with your key, right? We'd have to come back with water and hose them down in order to be able to get in. And there was inmates living in there, believe it or not. So I'm no stranger to the heat aspect of this whole thing. But aside from the air and things like that, I would stuff some blue ice bags in my vest. And yeah, I'll admit that it was uncomfortable and stuff, but I never skipped a single day where I snuck in there without my vest. And you know what? It's up to the sergeants and stuff to do those inspections and make sure that people are wearing them. And does it make a tough job a little bit tougher? Not as tough as it's going to be if your family has to pay for a funeral, or if you're going to end up with some scars or something like that, for the rest of your life. I think that the problems can largely be mitigated away. So I think that, all these people that want to bring up all of these negative attributes don't want to take a look at what the potential solutions to some of those things are. Right now, I just mentioned Manuel Gonzalez, and then, with this latest one with Lieutenant Lasco. And, other scenarios in between, you know, how many lives could be saved?
Right. Now, I do, again, everybody has their preference. I do prefer the vest that kind of match the uniform that you wear on the outside. Some states do have that. I happen to work with one that does. One thing is, it's to me, it's more comfortable, especially if there's ever a moment where you do have to take it off quickly or something, you know, for whatever reason. You know, you get some airflow in. The ones on the inside, to me, that was always tough because you get those crazy itches, and I don't know. It's to me, I thought it was uncomfortable. For us, we had the Velcro, so the Velcro would start to open inside the shirt. So I do like the outside ones. I got a chance to wear those for a while when I was a sergeant on the floor. Plus, as a supervisor, it's easier for me to inspect the outside ones. Because when we would do the inspection, sometimes we would have to tell people, show us that you have it by pulling down your shirt a little bit so we could see the top of the vest. That's good. That needs to be done. But sometimes doing that to a female, which don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, I mean, you know, you got to be universal with it. I understand that. But sometimes with the female, it would just lead to certain complaints where, you know, well, you told me to pull down my shirt. It just became a headache. I mean, again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but once they switched to the outside vest, to me, you could see it. It was a lot easier. It's like, okay, I see the person's wearing it or not. Hey, Connie, as a woman, though, would you think that they would have some concerns wearing the vest because maybe their physique?
I guess for some women who might be a little more full-figured, it may be a little difficult having the vest on. I know that there are some women that I'd spoken to that had some issues because of I don't know if it's just sort of once the weight of the vest is on and it may pull as they tuck in the uniform, issues with their back. So it's like a kind of constant push pull. And so, I mean, it's kind of, okay, so safety versus this discomfort. I mean, it's your job, right? And so ultimately, you know that in performing your job duties, you will be in situations where you could be hurt. And so, you know, Russ had mentioned like the cost, like it being very costly. But, you know, when you think of the litigation, when it comes to you not providing, so as an institution, not providing the tools to keep your staff safe, I think the liability is much greater than if up front you actually just bought the vest and made sure everyone had the vest that they need. It's almost like I tell you to go do your job, but I don't give you the tools to be effective, right? Because the instinct to protect yourself will always be there, like it kicks in. I think that's just the human function. But at least if you know your body is protected, and not to say the vest is the end all be all, right? There's clearly other skills and strategies and tactics and everything else that have to be employed. But the reality is that when you do have a vest on, at least you know there's some sort of shield between you and whatever might be coming your way. That's one less thing for you to be able to think about. So yes, I think from the female perspective, there could be some challenge wearing the vest for long term. I could just imagine the discomfort of wearing it for a double, right? Like, so even if you got through the 8 hours, now you're doing a double with this vest on and sort of the discomfort. But that's just the nature of the job. I mean, I don't know if like that's really merit to complain about, right? Like, because you know, and are there alternatives, right? Because I think that's the other thing. Sometimes because we have a contract with a particular vendor and this is what they offer, we just stick to that vendor. But if someone has a need that vendor may not be able to meet, we can check somebody else out to still make sure we can accommodate whatever those medical needs are that someone may have, because ultimately the person having a back issue or the person who, you know, they don't have their size, you may need to just go someplace else. But no matter what the issue is, the goal is that everyone is safe.
Yeah, and if the agency can't issue that person a vest, then that person should not go to work until that person gets a vest from the agency. Now, some agencies actually have the vests that are stab resistant and bullet resistant. So they're the same vest that you wear behind the wall, and maybe the same vest if you're going out on a trip. You know, you don't have to switch the vest. Now, like Russ mentioned, unfortunately, you have these facilities or these agencies that kind of limit the distribution of vests. I don't know if it's based on budget or not, but they decide, you know, however they prioritize it, which ones deserve vests. And I believe they probably do it, as Russ said, the highest level of custody. I'm assuming transports, but I'm afraid to think that there could be some facilities that do transports without vests, because I heard some things. Now, mind you guys, the transports, when the officers are wearing the vest, remember, their job is to protect that inmate. That inmate could have some enemies. So a lot of people think on the transport that they're wearing all this protective gear in case the inmate acts out. Sometimes they're actually wearing that protective gear because there's somebody in the public that wants to get to that inmate. You know, so the risk is always there, whether it's the inmate, you know, which obviously we have the protective gear for, or if it's the public who, you know, or maybe they want to come us because we're wearing our uniform. So to kind of think that, you know, you're having this limited budget and then you're trying to prioritize, I would love to see, and maybe Russ can comment on this, how they justify that priority.
Yeah, I'll jump right all over that. Okay, first of all, you know, when we're talking about transports, to view the transport safety aspect as central to the inmate you're transporting is a complete mistake in your strategy, right? Is because that inmate, for all you know, might be the best inmate that's ever been, and he's not going to try anything ever at all. Whereas someone who's looking to spring him from custody, someone who's looking to kill him, perhaps, or someone that just hates law enforcement and wants to take you on, you know, you've done nothing to look at what those other threats are. So you've done a disservice. You know, you're busy looking at the inmate. Yeah, he's a level 4 and we got to do X, Y, and Z. Well, what about all these other threats out there? Because there's a lot more threats than there are with just that one inmate. So that's definitely a deficit in someone's, you know, tactical and or strategic thinking. When we get back to other parts about the vest, things that I've, you know, gotten into some verbal altercations with some people, you know, you mentioned the exterior vest, which is what we kind of sort of started with in California Department of Corrections until somebody decided to overthink things. And they decided, well, you know what, that vest, it could be used, you know, to manipulate the officer, you know, if he gets in a fight or something like that. And so instead of having it on the outside where we're able to, you know, mitigate maybe some of the cooling issues and things like that, then they demanded that we put it on underneath our jumpsuits or our shirts. And so the heat thing became a little bit more of an issue. You know, we had to worry more about, you know, hydration and ventilation and things like that. Whereas, you know, if you're going to start down that road about what's a handle on an officer, how about that belt? How about just his jumpsuit? How about that radio that he's got stretched over, right? So, you know what? The solution to that obviously is for people to patrol their housing units naked, right? And so I think that sometimes, you know, some of these people that are thinking this stuff up don't see it through to where the big picture is. They have it right in front of them. The second thing that I tend to get in a lot of arguments with is stuff that gets regurgitated by staff who have been talked out of, you know, arguing or trying to bargain for vests. In that, and this is the big saying, is that a vest will get you hurt because an inmate will be more likely to try and target more vital areas, namely, you know, the head, neck, and C-spine, right? So when people tell me that, I say, you know, you've got to be kidding, right? Because what a vest actually does is it minimizes the area that you have to protect, you know, head, neck, and C-spine, right? Everyone can do that. If anyone out there has ever boxed or done any sparring, you also know that the head is the fastest moving target. Inmates don't become magically endowed with pinpoint accuracy all of a sudden just because you wear a vest. the dynamics of violent encounters, if you bother to study them any at all, show that you have a much better chance over a longer period of time with that vest, because you do only have to protect that area. You might even get some trauma protection in those areas. And so once again, what we have is we have some propaganda, because that's what that argument is, that's directed at staff to try and talk them out of wanting a vest or thinking about it. And the third and final level of that propaganda is what happens with some of the officers that don't want to be bothered because they're non-professional or they're haters, and they just wish that this would all go away, because they're never the ones out there pressing the issues anyway. They're the ones that are the trucks that are laying back, and they just think that they're too cool, too tough, too something to wear a vest. If we had advocated for years and years and years now, maybe Indiana Department of Corrections would have had a mandatory vest program. Maybe Lieutenant Lasko would be alive. It's hard to say. Now we can only go forward from this point and hope that people will start adopting those. And so if anyone out there hears this and they need some words to put in a document, a white paper or something, to try and bolster that, to try and negotiate it, either through their union or just with their admins, call me or Anthony or Connie, and we're going to help you out. But I think it's too much to ask that, people just decide, it's too hot, it's too unnecessary. I don't think that that's a wise position, especially anymore.
So Russ, just in short, so you were in favor of the outside vest then, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I think that, depending on where you're at, maybe on your climate or whatever, it is a little bit easier to mitigate the heat issue with the outside vest, because, there's a little bit more room. You're not trapping things in by putting a shirt or a jumpsuit or a BDU or something over it. There's a little bit extra room. They make these like ventilated ribbed vests that you can wear underneath it, which helps that flow. And it's a little bit easier if you were going to have some kind of cooling station with hoses and an AC or something to access it from that kind of point. So yeah, and that's why it kind of ticked me off that they took our ability to wear those vests away from us based on what I consider to be overthink about the whole issue about, whether someone's going to use it as the handle to turn you or assault you or something. I think there's just a level at which we can overthink things if we're not careful.
And Connie, just out of curiosity, what do you think is better from a medical standpoint? Do you think the inner vest is better than the outer vest? I mean, if you had to choose.
If I had to choose. So, I see the merit in someone being able to get pulled by the vest, only because as a civilian, I've gone into the housing units and seen other civilians who are like going to cells and talking, get pulled by their ties. So I'm just thinking, I could see how there could be some concern about the vest on the outside. But I also feel that you can't have one requirement without having the other. So like if we know that climate control is an issue, you can't expect that people are going to be in a space where they're dehydrated, where they could be open to having other issues exacerbated because of the climate issue. Because I could also see that being an OSHA issue, that you're having this expectation of the staff to work in conditions that aren't, they wouldn't be for optimal health, right? And for how do you perform optimally in those conditions if you're sweating? So I feel like if in the situation where someone has the option, not because like I think it's just cooler if it's on the inside or outside, but if I'm wearing it on the outside because I'm trying for personal safety to be able to like keep my body cool, to be able to mitigate some of the other things that might be going on, I think that they should have the option to do that. In places where climate control is not a concern and it's not a matter of, you somehow becoming ill because of because of wearing the vest, then by all means, I think if the requirement is to wear the vest under, then I don't see a reason why. So I don't think medically there would be like a medical justification for why you can't do it either way. I just think depending on the environment, there may be a reason for someone to opt out of wearing it underneath their clothes.
Now, for me, I only know the vest because that was required when I started my career in 2002. So if ever you're not wearing it, you feel vulnerable because it's become a part of you. So I think that the faster we start to introduce these vests, because we know it's needed. I mean, there's no doubt that these vests are not needed. People will start getting conditioned to the vest, and then the opposite would occur is now, they feel that when they're not wearing it, they're vulnerable. So again, we're behind the eight ball on that nationally. There should be that's the one thing about correction guys that's different than other law enforcement agencies like the police. The police seem to have more consistencies in their practices and the tools that they're provided. I don't think anybody in their right mind would tell a police officer you shouldn't have a vest on, or you don't need a vest, or we're not going to issue you a vest. Especially because, Gangi, they carry guns all the time. Okay, well, we're in a world where we don't get anything and they could have knives, so you're not given any way to protect ourselves. So, being in that same level of law enforcement, we should be given that same courtesy, that same, whatever it costs, that should be in the budget, the vest and whatever, every 5 years. I don't know how it would be done, but the vests get recycled, you get new vests. But right now, to be at a point now in 2021, after having so many sacrifices, basically, which could have been prevented if the person was wearing the vest, how do we allow that? Okay, well, we haven't had a death in our facility ever, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. So why are you going to wait for it to happen before you decide that we have to do something? You have a hero that already made the sacrifice. You had a hero in California that made a sacrifice, a hero in New Jersey that made a sacrifice, a hero right now in Indiana that made a sacrifice. Why don't we start looking at ourselves as a bigger family and not so much in isolation, and know that one correctional officer in Indiana, or one correctional officer in California, or one correctional officer in New Jersey, that's all you need to wake up. Don't wait for that correctional officer to be in your facility. Read the papers, see what happened, and say, you know what? Hey, guys, you see what happened in Indiana? Let's get on the ball with this, because that could easily happen here. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? I see you have a thought.
I just want to, harken back to the whole idea about corrections, in that we're often, I would say almost all the time, we're too reactionary. When I think back to, 1985, Sergeant Birchfield in Carson section at San Quentin, he was up there on that tier, and this was back before, vests were mainstream, but this wasn't about the vest. They'd had multiple staff members who had been speared through those bars. And so he ended up taking a spear to his chest and ended up dying right there in Carson section. So then what do they do the next day? They crack out the mesh and they start welding it over the bars so that officers can't be speared as easily. Well, they knew about the risks because other officers had already been speared, but they wait till someone dies to actually start putting the mesh on. So let's not be reactionary. Let's be, proactionary. Let's try and find a way to stop a death before it occurs. And there's going to be resistance. You're going to have resistance from staff. You're going to have resistance from administrators. And you're going to have, if you're really going to do it right in your facility, you're going to have a mandatory policy, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to have officers that are maybe younger and less experienced looking toward officers that don't give a crap and want to pretend that everything's okay. And they're going to say, you know what, I'm not going to wear my vest either. You can't have that. There has to be a uniformity to both the equipment and to the way it's distributed and worn.
Yeah, and you know what, guys? Sometimes when we walk around our facilities, so Lieutenant Lasco should have made national news. I don't know if it did, but it should have. I mean, he's a hero. He deserves that respect. sometimes you walk around in a correctional facility and doesn't, whatever state it is, let's say, you know, we lost him in Indiana, but let's say I'm in Mississippi and I'm walking around. All the officers should know of that sacrifice, whether it's the supervisors bringing it up at a briefing, if they have it, I don't know, or if it's admin getting the message out there by putting it out there in the officers' break areas, you know, not where the inmates can see it, but somewhere where the officers can see it, just so they're reminded, one, of the dangers of the job, but two, to you know, let's get some respect for these fallen heroes. Let's bring things together, because a person that works in corrections in Indiana is no different than a person who works in corrections in Mississippi and New Jersey. We're all families, so we all should feel that loss on that greater scale. So I think that's one thing that we have to try to figure out how we can do a little bit better. Are we able to somehow take that sacrifice? And if the media doesn't want to make it national, then we do it. You know, that was shared on within our groups, you know, in our social media platform. So how do we bring that hero recognition to our facilities? Because the thing is, guys, it was a sacrifice made, and what's being left behind is what we need to learn from, so the sacrifice isn't in vain. So if we don't go back to the job and share the news of that fallen hero, then we're losing out on the value of what comes when we have a sacrifice that's made, the lessons that are learned when, again, right here, a big part of that's the vest. Connie, what's your thoughts about that centralized message? And I know Russ has a thought on that as well, so maybe you guys could just go right after each other.
I mean, so I think the messaging is important. I think, you know, no life is lost in vain, right? And the fact that he put his life on the line for his brother, I think, you know, is already in of itself noteworthy. But I think it's the lessons that we learn from those situations, right? It is, you know, how vulnerable are you when you don't have your vest on, right? Like, and are there other ways that we could be making sure not only that we're vigilant in protecting ourselves, but we're protecting our brothers and sisters, you know? And when you think about the agency's protection of the staff, right? Like, because, you know, I think, yes, it sometimes it's budget, other times it's just, you know, there's not been enough pressure, right, for it to become a requirement. And so, you know, the more that we use our voices and speak up about things that are important to us, such as being protected at work and having vests, I think the agency does have to respond. So I think it's just us being able to really share those stories, but share them in a meaningful way so that there's never a life lost in vain.
Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on that as well?
You know, I kind of harken back towards some of the things that I've talked about, across corrections, because sometimes there are some departments, both big and small out there, that are struggling because they're not getting some of the things that they need. And so, you know, I always break it down to, you know, STEP, S-T-E-P, status. Everyone needs peace officer status. Training. Everyone needs training that's commensurate with having that peace officer status. Equipment. You know, everyone should be getting the best equipment, and that includes a vest. And then pay that pays you for having all of that experience with regard to those other three. When I see some of these things, and I see some of the variations and the non-uniformity about what different correctional departments are doing, yeah, some of that, you know, maybe it wouldn't work for one department or another, or one department's too big to implement it, or another department's too small to implement it. That's all well and good. There's going to be some variation there, but I've seen so much variation, and I've seen so many, dangerous policies, dangerous things happening because people aren't training up to their potential there. And so I just come back to that thing, you know, we talked about tonight about, you know, would that vest have made a difference for Eugene Lasco? I believe it would have. What else might have really made a difference if he had baton, right? What if he'd been able to run up to that inmate, whip out his Monadnock expandable baton and take a shot on that guy, right? And then that guy wouldn't have had a chance to stab him, and that guy would have had to stop stabbing the other officer. All right. there's so many things. And then right away, I meet this resistance all the time when I'm talking to people out there. They say, yeah, but inmates could get that baton. And then I get right back to it again. Well, we should patrol the housing units naked then, right? Well, no, you know what? There's risk in everything we do, and we mitigate and we decide how much, because this is a risk business, and there's just some things that we have to do, that we have to train up to, that we have to be prepared for. That's why we get paid.
And believe it or not, guys, having the baton is also a deterrence, whether you're using it or not. And then also when issuing that, obviously you should have someone protecting that weapon with a weapon. So if you have someone with a baton, then you probably are going to have two people with a baton. So if they decide to be foolish and go after the one person, well, now my partner has it back, especially when you're on a trip. The reason why you want to have two people is if you have to send someone on a trip that requires a weapon, then you need someone else to back that weapon up with a weapon. Again, it's the deterrence, and then the backup immediately to say, well, don't be a fool, because if you grab that person's gun, I got his back, or I got her back. Again, as we come to a close, I just want to let people know this should not be a discussion that we're having. To me, this is not where we should be. I mean, we should have evolved past that. So to me, this kind of brings the channel back a little. We have brought, what we could, the knowledge so far, and then to find out that we have to fall back to do something like this, when to me, this should be automatic, right? I mean, officers have vests at this point in 2021. The moment it was issued in one state because you had an officer that maybe life could have been saved. Why wasn't that spread nationally? Like, I mean, what are we doing? What could we have done? I mean, are we, when we find out the death of these heroes, are we letting the agency know? The agencies that may not be in tune with what's happening nationally in corrections, maybe the people that sit up top that just don't care because they're in it for the money. Are we going back to those bosses and saying with a nice email or something that could be documented, hey, this just happened in Indiana and they're talking about vests. Maybe we should get on it and address it to Mr. Gangi, Mr. Hamilton, address it to somebody, because once you start holding people responsible, then you start to see that they forward it up. But right now, I don't know if we're doing that. I don't know if we're partly to blame. I really don't at this point, because I want to say that the agency should be more on it, but are we really on it as much as we should be? Because I figure if we're on it enough, then we should be able to push that train a little forward, especially if you have a union. If you have a union and you guys don't have vests, I would go back and talk to the union and say, guys, come on, man. So I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air right now, and I don't want to get anybody angry, but it is that important, guys. Can we go back and look to see what we can do? I mean, just to get the word out there. It's just frustrating to have a dialogue like this, guys. It really sets us back a little bit. Hey, Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I think that this has been a great discussion. It's been something that I've talked about a lot. I haven't talked about it too much with respect to Tier Talk or to Keepers of Chaos or anything like that, but I've certainly had hundreds of discussions online about it. And I just think that it's time that we started making some of this stuff a real priority, vests and, batons and OC and some of those things, and, not take no for an answer. All right. It's time for us to not accept what we're being told when they say, no, you can't have a vest because it'll put you in danger, and going, what? I mean, are we dealing with serious people when they tell us things like that? Do they really think that we are, that naive? I mean, that gullible? So I think it's time for corrections to drag itself into the 21st century and start attacking some of these things. And I know that, you guys out there, if you need some words, if you need some letters written, just some ideas bounced off you on anything, man, let us know. I mean, we've proved ourselves over and over again, and we've done that in lots of different situations. This one's no different.
Right, and guys, before we get to Connie, I just want to say something. You see this book back there? So the book was written because it's a universal precaution, right? I didn't write the book to say that all inmates, how do I say it? All inmates are garbage. That's not what it is. But you have that wolf. You know, you have that wolf that you have to be ready for, which means that you have to be universal precaution. So when I see that you have agencies that don't issue the right equipment, issue the right training, to me, it feels like they have a level of trust, which is opposite to what we should be teaching. Like, if you're not giving the officers what they need to protect themselves, you're also trusting the inmate population not to do anything foolish. But then you're telling people, don't trust the inmates. Yeah, but you set up an environment where I feel that you do. So the thing is, if the higher level doesn't really get involved and give the officers what they need, then you're setting up an environment where it just doesn't put the officer in the right mindset for a battle that could occur. I mean, think about this too, guys. The vest, the tools that are needed to de-escalate. This also puts a mindset in the officer. I'm in the real world here now, guys. You know what I mean? But when you don't have the vest and you don't have the tools, what kind of mindset does that give the officer? That it's going to be okay. That we can trust these inmates. I mean, just think about the mindset. Connie, what's your thoughts in closing?
In closing, I just want people to think about the vest like the mask, right? Like, so if we think about COVID right now, right? You step out your car, you're like, oh shit, I forgot my mask, right? You go back in, you get your mask, right? It's just one of those things. Not to say whether you got the vaccine, you didn't get it, that's all. Who cares about that? I'm not saying we shouldn't. That's not the point. What I'm saying is that we know the mask right now in this day and age is essential. When we step outside, we know when we step into the facilities, we have our mask. When you're responding to a code, gloves on automatically, right? There's some things that we just do. And I feel like this vest is something we just need to do. It is part of what we do routinely. And I can't imagine that someone would have the thought that the vest is not needed. We know we need our mask. We know I need our gloves. Those are things that universally protect us. And I think the vest does the same thing.
It's well said, Connie, and you brought it to today. Without being too specific, I'd like to dedicate this episode to Jim Hall. Jim Hall's a warrior. I just want to dedicate this episode to Jim Hall. So I'm not going to tell him we did it, but what do you got, Russ?
Yeah, I'll get specific about Jim Hall.
All right, go ahead.
Send him your best on here. Say something about him. Jim Hall, my buddy, my friend, my administrator on Keepers of Chaos, got himself a raging case of Corona, and I ain't talking about beer. So we hope that Jimbo gets better real soon, and I'm trying to keep as much contact with him as I can. Those of you that know him know him to be a great guy, and just want to send out our prayers, our well wishes, and I'm gonna kid him and send him some really bad memes later on tonight.
And listen, so since we know Jim Hall's not at work, there's no excuse why you can't watch a full episode of Tier Talk. So we're not going to tell you that we dedicate this episode to you. So I'm expecting something from you in about a year. Probably by the time you get this episode, it'll be about a year. But I expect something that says, hey, Gangi, remember that video you did about vests? I see you gave me a shout out. So, but we really do wish him well. I'm sure he'll be okay. He's a warrior to begin with. But if we could send our well wishes to him. So, guys, as I said, it's just a topic we wanted to discuss. Hopefully, we can move forward at this point. The key is to get it out there. If you find value in this, share it. These could be the videos that, if get into the right hands, can defend the need for your vest or the right equipment. Because sometimes people don't even know it's needed unless the right questions are asked. So, if anything, we just did a video that puts out the right questions, which means that maybe we'll get some good answers. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.